Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Cohen. Thanks so much for attending today's live demo and pure Q&A session. We are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for a couple of people to log into today's session, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So if you don't mind, we'll just pause for a second or two, letting a few people log in, and then we'll start about 2 minutes after the hour. While we're waiting, our two guests are from CarbonHelix. They are not only a SOC provider to MSPs, but they also provide MSP services to small businesses. They are a QRadar supplier of technology. So if you have any questions specifically around QRadar about how can a SOC support an MSP, or how does an MSP support small businesses, those are all things that we can get to in the next couple of minutes once we go ahead and get started. So we've had a few more people log in, so why don't we go ahead and get going? As I said, my name is Stuart Cohen. I'm the president of IGI Cyber Labs. Today, as always, this is really an opportunity to see Nodeware in action, to get a demonstration, to ask a few questions, not only of us, but of one of our partners. In this particular case, the folks from CarbonHelix are nice enough to join us. As you know, we do public service announcement webinars on a regular basis, a couple of months, which is really about, educating small business leaders, board members, investors, and the like about what's happening in the world of cybersecurity. We've had people from CISA, we've had people from NIST, we've had people from Zero Trust. We've talked about the role of the MSP, IT, transitioning to cyber hygiene, holistic risk management, and the like. Those sessions are really around educating people about what are a couple of things you could do to be safer and smarter as a small business owner or as an MSP that needs to reach out to those small businesses. As I've said in the past, there's about 655,000 small businesses in the United States. 12 months ago, half those business leaders thought the bad guys would never find them, so they didn't need to worry about doing anything around cyber hygiene. They had a little bit of desktop support, and that was enough. Now the world's changed, with all of the frequency of attacks, with all of ransomware being in the news, with all the other issues. They can't hide. They know they can't hide. And they know they need to do something. So whether it's, excuse me, because of the frequency of attacks, because of its compliance requirements or regulatory requirements, there are always a number of reasons. Now, while executives, customers, supply chain, they're worried about critical data, and they're worried about access to critical data and monitoring their critical data to make sure that it's not going to be attacked or compromised by somebody. So with that, feel free to put your questions in the chat or in the question box. We're happy to address all of those questions. We did get a few that were submitted in advance on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for those. I had a few people direct message me specifically for today's session. So we will get to those specifically around, how did CarbonHelix select Nodeware as a QRadar provider? And we'll get to that in a second, as well as some of the things that they're doing to support the MSP marketplace and the end user marketplace. But before we do that, I want to introduce both Mark and David, the principal and VP of sales at CarbonHelix. I want to thank them for being a partner of ours and also thank them for being on today's session. They'll be available to answer any questions, which we will get to in a second. Before we do that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Mark Klein, who is the head of our customer success program at Nodeware. and let him give you an overview of the Nodeware product, talk about some of the features and functions, and show you the new deep scan capability, which, as some of you probably know, is now saving cyber technicians and systems analysts at our MSPs on average, between $40,000 and $60,000 per year in annual savings. So we'll talk a little bit about how that happened, how they're taking advantage of it, and how they're passing on some of their savings to their customers, as well as how they're keeping some of that to improve their profitability. So with that, Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stuart. Can everyone see my screen okay on your end?
Yep.
Okay, great. Just wanted to confirm. So what I'm going to do is take everyone through a high-level overview of Nodeware, what it can do, the ease of how you can deploy it, and actually the ease of remediation now with our new deep scan technology. So really, landing page for everyone I'm sure is familiar. What we have here is our overall score. This is our health. We run on a 0 to a 999 or 1000. Our total number of customers within our multi-tenant dashboard is 3. I have a total of 97 assets, of which 90 of them are internal local area network assets, 7 of them external domains, public IP addresses, so your WAN assets. Just some cider news pulled from our blog, some other updates, and then here's our worldwide stats. So you can see we've been around for about, I'd say a solid 7 years, in which time here's all of our protected assets. So I call those our bragging rights. Really the meat and potatoes though is the vulnerability scan and the data behind it. So to get to that, I can get there a couple of ways, but just clicking on the score dives me into the multi-tenancy of the dashboard. Here you can see I have 3 customers. I call these customer cards. They're very easy to create a new customer. You hit add new customer in the top right, fill out some demographic data. You can invite a technical, do a commit. There's a couple ways to do this. I will go over a second way. And for any consumer or end user that you want to provide a 7-day free trial, you can just toggle this on. When you create the account, they can scan unlimited for a period of 7 days. Once you would to submit that, you would end up with a customer card, very similar to this. And you would end up on this screen. So this is the manage customer screen. Really quick, it's just what you've just filled in. If I wanted to limit the assets that they can scan, let's say it's a small network, they only have 10 devices, I can put in 10 assets and update that. So Nodeware will only focus on those first 10 assets it sees. I'll get into, that will be more clear when we get into how we sell and so forth. Sites and interfaces. This is where you would submit your external WAN facing, public facing IP or domain names. So you can just hit add external. You can either fill in the domain name or public IP address, CIDR range if you have it. Once you do that, you'll see it on this list. And then by default, externals are opt-in. We can't automatically detect what your public IP addresses are or domain names are. So it would be an opt-in. And then you can set your cadence for this to be rescanned. So it's either on demand, you only want it done once, you do it monthly, weekly, or daily, depending on what you selected. You would then have on weekly, Monday through Friday, so on and so forth, a monthly, 1 through 30, to select the day of the month that you want them scanned. The advantage to that is you don't have to continuously go back in and resubmit them. They'll just continue to scan on that cadence. While I'm in the manage customer dashboard, I will get to, so we deploy, the proper deployment of Nodeware is twofold. We deploy as agents, which are installed on the local corporate asset, laptops, desktops, whatever it may be. They're very good for hybrid work environments or even remote workers. So for instance, I actually happen to be working from home today. I have a Nodeware agent installed locally on my machine. It will only score and scan the corporate asset in which it is installed. So it's not worried about my other computers or my Roku TVs or doorbells or any of that. It's only going to scan that corporate asset. And we have Windows, Mac, as well as Linux agents. And we also provide a quick installation script. So you can run this, you can push this out to multiple machines via an RMM tool or any sort of distribution tool quietly, and it just runs as a system service in the background. Credentialed scanning, this is for the sensor. That's the other way we deploy, which I might as well jump there right now. So we deploy a sensor, which is a one-to-many. It will sweep the entire LAN network and find all the IPs that are in use, and then pull that data back and begin to inventory, fingerprint, and vulnerability scan all of the devices on your network that are currently running. The sensors can be deployed in a magnitude of ways. Windows, just a simple executable, you know, standard Windows next install. If you get into a bigger environment where you want to run multiple sensors on a single machine, we recommend virtualizing that. And we support both Hyper-V as well as VMware. We do have a hardware appliance, an Intel Nux appliance down here, little 4x4 PC. We preload it, ship it to you or your customer. They can activate it. This is a very rarely used. I think I maybe built 1 to 3 a year maybe. So we basically have everything covered as a SaaS model and with the software. Just going back to the customer management, we also have a tagging feature. So based off your tagging methodology, this allows you to segment your network very quickly. So here we have some created tags, but if I wanted to just create another tag, I just type in my text and choose the color, and it will create the tag up there. The alerts dashboard. By default, we will alert the primary email from whomever signed up the account. So in this case, it happens to be demo reseller at nodeware.com. So if a critical vulnerability pops, a new asset is found, or the sensor goes offline, this user would automatically receive an email saying there is a new type of alert found on your network. You can send this up to 3 different endpoints. So if you wanted to add, one thing I recommend is if you have a global ticketing system, it's good to add that in here. You can select email. You would enter the global email address to the ticketing system. Now those alerts will not only go to the owner of the account, they will also be sent to that ticketing system. We do support Slack as well. You just create a channel, give us the channel. We then push those alerts to the channel. And we are currently still working on a Microsoft Teams integration, very similar to Slack. It would push it out to the channel.
And Mark, before you leave that, we've had a number of sessions that we've done with Gradient. We are fully integrated with Gradient. So if an MSP is a Gradient customer, you have the ability to take the output of Nodeware. It immediately drops into the Gradient activity and gives you the ability then with your billing system and with your ticketing system to be able to fully integrate that from an API standpoint. So that's an area where we're seeing a number of MSPs get a great deal of productivity enhancements by leveraging the API with Gradient to be able to do that as it relates to billing.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Stuart. Appreciate it. Really, what we just went through is some high account configuration. Really, the meat and potatoes comes where you get to your device asset list. And here you can see it. I have for the Aperture Science Inc. company, it has an overall score of 834. We have 16 assets that are currently online. You can tell online, offline by the green and red eye. As you can see, green would be online, red would be offline. So a total of 19 assets and a total of 19 assets monitored. Diving in, so also this icon, this exclamation point. So this means that there's either a critical on this device or the score is below 500. So that's a very quick identification piece. And then we have this little icon that is shadowed in. This means that credentials have been applied to the sensor. In comparison, here we have an agent that is deployed. It's just a little slightly different. This guy has a hat on. But let's dive into this agent and take a look. Actually, before I do that, let me get to the tagging. So here you can see we auto tag. Nodeware does 3 things. It will inventory, It'll pull the IP and MAC address. The second step would be what we call fingerprint, where it pulls the host name and the OS that the machine is running. And then we will auto tag it. So we see on this top one, we're running Ubuntu 2004. We know that it's a server, so it gets a server tag, and then it gets a Ubuntu tag. And then these other tags were created based off of our tagging methodology. So if I wanted to segment this network and say, I only want to see my accounting devices, I can click on that and bam, now my network is segmented that fast and I can perform additional features on that. I can either individually select devices or I can do a bulk multi-select, all of them. So let's say I wanted to do some additional stuff on this. I can add additional tags to them. So I could also tag them as network devices. Now you can see that they have network tags associated with them. I can apply credentials. These are agents, so it knows that it can't take credentials. But here's another one. I can run a report just on those two assets selected. I can run any one of our report templates, network report, executive summary, 2-page, executive summary or external, so on and so forth. And it would only generate a report just on the assets selected. I can also rescan these devices. So I can issue a rescan. Let's say I did some remediation on those two devices. I wanted to see the results of my remediation instead of waiting for Nodeware to scan it again, which is once per 24 hours, the vulnerability scan happens. This will immediately start the scan in the next open queue slot. So clearing that, we will dive into this device here. So this is, you can see up here in this blue circle, this is running an agent. Here's the asset name or host name. You can change that if you want. That's just the machine given to the, or the name given to the machine. The operating system, you can override that if you wanted to. You don't need to. And also you could issue a rescan from here. Here it breaks down. This thing has a score of 0. And just for everyone, this is a bone stock Windows 2019 server with no patches, and you can see the number of vulnerabilities on it, 1,764 out of the box. So it gets a poor score. This is a 0. It's 41 criticals, 1,276 highs, so on and so forth on down the line. If I wanted to filter to just my mediums, I can click that. There it is. And then I can just go back to the asset list. Oh, went one too far. Let's go back to that same device so we can keep it even. There it is. So here, so again, this is the individual machine, score of 0. we rank from critical to low or informational in that order. I wanted to dive in and I wanted to start to fix stuff. That's what it's about, is getting things fixed or remediated. I can click in one depth deeper. So here's an actual CVE right up here. This is the CVE that was found on the machine. Net logon, evaluation of privilege vulnerability. Here's a description of that. And then this is our, what we term our new deep scan data. So we run through the tests that we found. We see it was a 2019 server. It is vulnerable in the tests. So this one's pretty straightforward, right? There's a KB or a patch that's not installed on this machine. So very quickly, you can go to that machine and kick off Windows updates. Chances are it's going to pull that update. If for some reason it doesn't, you can follow this link down in the solutions section, and it will take you specifically to Microsoft's page for that vulnerability, and you can scan down in this list. Here are all the patches available for that. You pick it by your machine type and download either the monthly roll-up or the specific security patch for that vulnerability. Going to a different example of the deep scan data, which becomes more useful, is let's go to, I think this background service may be one. Oh, that one is. Okay, I know where it is. Excuse me. That was just another knowledge base or patch that was required. But on a lot of times, Windows machines will have different third-party software. They install vulnerable code, or that code becomes vulnerable over time. So again, it's very similar. We provide the CVE up top, the criticality of it, and then what is it, and then what did we actually found? What made this vulnerability show up? As you can see here, it actually shows the full path right to this file. So this executable file is what made it pop. A really interesting thing, not a lot of folks know it. Microsoft, since Windows 2010, has changed their update process from security focused or locking things down focused to reliability. They got sick of it, reports, my machine crashed, my machine crashed. So what they do is, if they're going to do an update to a DLL or an executable, they will maintain that executable that they're going to replace. They will move it to a subfolder, replace it with their new executable. They create a manifest, which allows any third-party software that needs to use a specific version of that file, they'll be able to find it in its new location. So tons of people that come in before we had this deep scan result data, 100% pass vulnerability. We then figured out a way to actually show what was the file on the machine that created an attack surface to still show this. And here's an example of that. So you'll see Windows will scatter them over numerous directories. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. So basically that's it. You rinse and repeat. You go down a list, you do updates, you find files. A lot of times it may be a full path. It'll say like, C program files splash top. So you know that splash top, remote access to machines, runs a vulnerable open source or an open SSL version. That's just one example. So by seeing the name of the application in the file, it at least allows you to go and gives you a starting point for remediation on it, which makes your remediation much quicker.
Hey, Mark.
Yes, sir.
So we got a couple of questions on that. The first question we got is that the productivity savings that you guys have been talking about? And the answer to that is yes. We've been told by a couple of our MSPs and a few of our advisory board members that on average, they've been spending 15 minutes per day per new vulnerability, and this has eliminated that. So that if it eliminates that 15 minutes, they're doing 10 a day. That gets to 2.5 hours. That gets to 12.5 hours a week. That's how we got to the $40,000 to $60,000 of annual savings on somebody that had to do that work in the past. Obviously, that gets recognized on an annual basis, and we just rolled that out. So people are just starting to see those benefits, but that's where that number comes from. The second question we got was, how long does it take Nodeware to show that this remediation has been put in place? So how quickly does the asset rescore, if you will, Mark?
Okay, great question. So again, as I mentioned, we inventory every 1 minute, we fingerprint every 15 minutes, we vulnerability scan once per 24 hours per machine. So your entire network gets vulnerability scanned once every 24 hours. However, if you did remediation, you didn't want to wait for the next 24-hour cycle, you can just hit rescan right there. And as you can see, that device has then been moved to the top of the queue. So as soon as one machine falls out, it would become the next machine slotted into that queue. So I would say on average, it would take 10 to 15 minutes for it to get picked up. And then depending on the size of the machine, the file system, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the machine size. Then your list would be updated. So if I made some, remove this high, did some remediation on it, I just hit shoot a rescan. I'm going to come back and look probably within 30 minutes to see if it's been removed. And yeah, so you can issue rescans, either individually or in bulk, you can do rescans. So I just wanted to touch on one quick point here, is not a lot of folks know this. Microsoft Office, by default, you either run 365 in the cloud, but it still puts files on your computer, or you install Office locally. Right here, there is a vulnerability out of the box with Office with a bad version of OpenSSL. So very important. We've chased this for months before we actually found this information out. You would think Microsoft wouldn't do that, but guess what? It's one of the ODBC drivers that makes it backwards compatible to older versions of Microsoft Office. So just a pro tip there. So it's basically rinse and repeat. You go through all your devices. I would recommend starting in your at your criticals, working through your highs. The average score you would like to have on a network, I would say, would be is close to 950. 950, you're pretty good. There's a few things that need to be picked up or cleaned up, but for the most part, you're pretty secure. So you just rinse and repeat to get this done. Here you can see I have an external scan. It's a little cloud icon. That's how I'm able to determine that. And we went through, so sensors, we did talk about sensors. So a Nodeware sensor is capable of scanning 1,024 devices, or that equates to a /22 or 4/24 networks. By default, when you install Nodeware, it will get a DHCP address if you have one provided if it's on a DHCP network, or you can provide a static address. Since we know the external address here and the internal address, we will automatically add the first subnet. But let's say you had an additional subnet in either a VLAN within the building or even remotely. So let's say I had 2 locations. My other location may be a 10.10.0.0/24. I can enter that in. Within 15 minutes, the sensor will pick that up and begin to inventory it, fingerprint it, and vulnerability scan it. It's very easy to connect the sensor. So as you deploy the Windows sensor, let's say next, 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 it will stop. It will provide you a 4-digit activation code, very much like Netflix. If anyone set that up, you would come to the dashboard, type in your 4-digit code. You can provide an optional name for the sensor, which shows up right here. And then you can select the customer that you want to associate that sensor with. You hit connect. That's what does the linkage from the local Windows installation of the sensor, or even the virtualized sensors. That's what does your linkage back to the customer that you want it to be associated with. Real quick, running down our subscription page. This is basically a breakdown of your usage. As you can see in the top right-hand corner, I can download a CSV of all my usage, which is basically just similar to this, the breakdown of the data. I see Dunder Mifflin's using the most, pie chart representing the same data. Again, total 90 internal, my externals, my total, and then my total subscription size is 2,000. It gives me 1,900 or 1,903 remaining devices that I can continue to roll this out to my additional customers that I want to onboard. Jumping to the report section. So we have a number of reports. Let's say I want to run an executive summary report for the Aperture customer. I would select that executive summary. You can see up top, it's starting to generate that. While that's generating, you can also schedule your report. So that report is already done. I can do it on a on-demand weekly or monthly cadence, the day of the week that I want to schedule it to run, which reports I want to run. So you can select any number of reports, and for which customer, all of my customers or just an individual customer. So you know on that cadence, you come back and the report will be sitting here ready for you to download. So here we go on 11/17, we generated this executive summary report. I'm going to pull that down and launch it. This is basically what I call the C-suite report. It's a very high level overview for folks that don't want the technical data. They just want to know, well, how healthy am I? Here it is, the data was generated, the top 10 vulnerabilities along with its score, of course, the most common vulnerabilities found across this customer, a vulnerability profile, critical, high, medium, low, respectively, and then some canned text. What is continuous vulnerability management and how does it benefit me? We talk about confidentiality, availability, integrity, so on and so forth. The last piece I want to touch on, obviously we do have our support page. This is for everything you need to know about Nodeware. Kind of my favorite piece is the deployment instructions. So if you wanted to learn how to deploy a Windows sensor, here's everything you need from A to Z on how you would deploy it. You download it, start the install. Here's that 4-digit code I talked about. And then you come back to the sensors page, type it in, and finish the linkage. And then we did talk about building out a team. So we have a team section. These are my users that I want to invite or have access to this data. All I need is a first name, last name, and an email address. What level of access I want to provide. Analyst is read-only. Technician, more than read-only. They have access to create sensors, deploy stuff, modify risks, and rescan data. Administrator, self-explanatory. And then which customer do I want them to have access to? Again, I can either grant all, or I can just individually select a single customer. When I submit this invite, that user would receive an email. So-and-so is inviting you to join their Nodeware team. They follow the link where they would create their username, their password, implement their multi-factor authentication. And when they log in, if I only granted them access to, say, Dunder Mifflin, they would not see these two cards. They would only see the Dunder Mifflin card. So they could only interact with that data set. In a nutshell, that is Nodeware.
Mark, so we got another question that said, is there some sort of cleanup method used by Nodeware to remove old devices from the tenant? We see duplicates after a computer is reset and the agent is reinstalled.
That is correct. So Nodeware runs the dashboard and reporting run on a 30-day cadence. So if a device is offline, it will automatically, and it has to be off for 30 days consistently, meaning that it hasn't checked back into Nodeware, it will automatically fall off the asset list. You may see a few duplicates. If you started to sweep your network with a sensor to begin with, but then decided to go the agent route, there is about a 12, I'll call it a 6 to 12 hour window where you may see duplicates. We run a deduplicate process on those where agent is the master of record. Agents will always trump sensors. So that runs twice a day to where that cleanup will happen, and then it will dispose of the sensor from scanning the same asset that has an agent to remove the duplicates.
Mark, thank you very much. You know, you might want to keep this available in the background in case there's any other questions.
Sure.
First of all, let me get to the CarbonHelix guys. We got a couple of questions specifically for CarbonHelix. One specifically, you know, could you describe, you know, why you selected Nodeware for your QRadar solution, knowing, you know, full well to our audience that the vulnerability scanning from IBM was retired, so it created an opportunity for you to do something. Maybe you want to comment on that for a second, and then we just got another question in that I'll get to next.
Yeah, so I can start on that one. Hi, my name's David. I'm with CarbonHelix, of course. So when we found out that QRadar was going to be sunsetting their internal scanner, we had to go out and find a solution. And QVM with QRadar was very simple. It came packaged in with QRadar. We were able to deploy that and set up scans for our customers and ingest all of that data into QRadar to dynamically adjust how we viewed a security offense, whether it's patched, it's vulnerable, or whatnot. We looked at several different solutions. Some of our customers were already running a Qualys or a Rapid7 or something alongside so that we had duplicate data, but some of them weren't at all. So we were looking for something extremely quick and easy to deploy that gave us most of the functionality of all the other tools out there and be able to get up and running very quickly. And we've already built the integration into QRadar, so it was just an easy plug and play swap.
Perfect, thanks so much. So going back to Mark Klein for a second, we got a question about what happens when a computer changes its name. Is there ever a time where Nodeware will update itself to show the new computer name on that list?
Yes, that's a great question. So the master of record that Nodeware uses for kind of keeping track of devices is MAC address, right? It's the network interface card. That's one of the unique IDs that we earmark off of. But we will match IP. Obviously, that changes all the time. MAC address being master of record. Host name. So if you change the name of your computer, that would be updated automatically on the next vulnerability scan. So just prior to the vuln scan running, we do run another fingerprint that in 99.9% of the cases will update that host name that was changed.
Perfect. So we got a question. If I'm an MSP and I'm interested in the SOC capabilities that CarbonHelix has, can you tell me a little bit about that? Mark or David, one of you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that as well. So 90% of our business is through other MSPs and other MSSPs that are out there reselling a product that's either the customer doesn't have the bandwidth or wherewithal to support it, or they just don't want to. And so those MSPs or MSSPs, they don't want to get into the SOC business either. They're resellers, right? So they introduce us to their customers, and we can provide a SOC service layered on top of their current SIM deployment, and integrating other tools like Nodeware, EDRs, and so on to provide that 24/7 coverage and even take remediation for them. But the way we do that can vary, and it's different from partner to partner. So if you'd like a referral-based arrangement, if you'd like to put it on your paper, however you like to do that, we've got a variety of different ways to do so.
Got it. So we just got another question posted about, but you also support end users as an MSP, correct?
Correct, yes. Typically the enterprise level customer, they already have a VAR that they prefer, and so that VAR is going to resell our services. The SMB market, if you have particular customers that you'd like to just refer us to, we can work direct with them and work something out with you on the back.
Yeah, so if you're a reseller and you know of an end user organization that needs local assistance as it relates to their cyber hygiene, cyber support, I would introduce them to CarbonHelix. That's a great way to go. And then for the MSPs that are, on the session today, if you have traditional IT supported customers that you need to figure out how do you transition them to cyber hygiene, this deep scan capability and these the immediate output and the productivity savings that you will get from not having to do those vulnerability scanning research yourself is a great way to go do this as well. So that's a way to quickly get the attention of the folks of your IT only organizations that need to transition to cybersecurity. So we got asked a question about the video. I think everybody's gotten the answer to it, but we will have a video of this available. It'll be on our YouTube channel, and we can connect you to the YouTube channel. It's in the chat that everybody can see, or it's in the answer box, and we'll make sure we get that out to everybody as a follow-on as well. If I go back to the CarbonHelix guys for a second, you obviously have people that have been using, other vulnerability management tools, but maybe they were running Sunday nights, weekends, monthly or quarterly. Can you talk about kind of, the need for continuous monitoring and how it's allowed you to maybe have both of those offerings available?
Yeah, so continuous vulnerability scanning then. When we identify a security incident, as David was saying, we score it initially at the time that the incident is created. And that's fine for a traditional type vulnerability scanning tool. We've got the most up-to-date data available, and we've got a score, we've got a priority on that security incident. But as we step into remediating the vulnerability, all the different actions that might occur, one of them might be to ensure that asset has been patched. I think the example Mark gave a little bit earlier, how do you verify that your patching team has actually taken the action they're supposed to? So if you think of automation systems, we use a SAW platform as well that takes a security incident and runs it through all the way to conclusion. Well, so some of those security incidents can be open for an extended period of time. And so let's say, a few days have passed. We've now got old information about the assets, about the vulnerabilities, but with Nodeware, that information has been rescanned. It's already there, it's been refreshed. So integrating with some of our automation tools, we can then refresh the incident information with the latest asset details, the latest vulnerabilities, the latest scores, and that might drive additional actions by a SOC team. We can also use that then to verify that the team responsible for patching has actually done, taken that action, patch the system. So, we've heard of some other breaches in the past where the security team are dealing with vulnerabilities, the IT operations team are dealing with patches. How do you share that information? Make sure that everything's being taken care of. So being able to pull the most accurate, up-to-date vulnerability information into your automation tools and then automatically check that the remediation team, the patching has been done. It relies on the ability to automate, and Nodeware has APIs for this, and also the most current data. So as Mark said, we can refresh the asset, pull down the latest data even within a 24-hour period, but we're always up to date with the very latest information for these, for these security incidents. So that's how we're using it. That's obviously a major benefit of the continuous scanning, always up-to-date information that Nodeware has. And it accurately then prioritizes and cross-checks to make sure that remediations are taking place. So that's kind of one of the benefits of the continuous scanning there. Stuart, the other one as well, we talked about how we're looking to use this is if a critical vulnerability is announced, and there's been a few over the years where we've had a vulnerability announced by some software vendor, and immediately within hours, exploits have started flooding in. And there's one in particular from a few years ago where overnight, that software vendor had sent out an announcement that said, if you haven't patched your systems by now, or you haven't disconnected your systems within a few hours of this being announced, consider yourself compromised. So that's kind of the worst case scenario for us here. So having the up-to-date scanning capability, refreshing that information, verifying the patching, if we ever have that kind of situation again, we'll be able to say you patched in time, or we identified it and we remediated it, we disconnected it from the network, we took some action. So a couple of examples there of how we put this to use.
Mark, thanks so much. Those are some great perspectives. And I have one as a follow-up question on this as well. But let me get to one other question. To Mark Klein, we got a question. Does the deep scan help eliminate false positives? Because the traditional vulnerability management tools that run, weekly and monthly, they seem to show a lot of false positives.
That is 100% correct. One of the major reasons that we wanted this data to be presented to the end user is, you're correct, we would get a lot of support tickets around, I think this is a false positive, and we would work with the vendor or MSP to actually determine that it wasn't, but it was a very manual process. So by showing the deep scan data, there is no question. There's a file, an attack surface or attack vector left on that machine that you may not be aware of that made this vulnerability pop. So it immediately eliminates that. I think this is a false positive. What should I do? There's no arguing it. The data is the data, and it's right in front of all the users now at this point.
No, that's a great point. So CarbonHelix, one of the questions we also got, we got another question about when did IBM discontinue their vulnerability scanning capabilities, or retire it, I guess is probably a better way to say it.
Yeah, they announced it about 2 years ago. I think we've still got support through for scanning, for vulnerability data. I think we've got a few more months left, haven't we, David?
April. Yeah.
April, yeah. So we've still got time, but we can't say that it's being actively developed. We're getting up to date vulnerability data, up-to-date vulnerability research information. It still works, but yeah, not actively developed.
So I got a question that is a follow-up to the statement I made. They said, if we have a lot of IT-only customers, how do we upgrade them to cyber hygiene? You know, David and Mark, maybe I'll let you guys comment on that first, and then I can respond with a couple of things I think Nodeware can do to make that easy for our partners.
Yeah, do you want to take that, David, or do you want me to?
No, I can. So traditionally, a lot of these security tools have been enterprise focused and were out of reach for smaller businesses that were purely IT focused, right? That's one thing that CarbonHelix has focused on the last 7 years, is taking these enterprise solutions and scaling them down to the small business. And for 2023, that's going to be our target. We started these campaigns already, and what we're running into a lot of times is these smaller businesses have an IT management company that's taking care of their desktops and the even iPads, cell phones, and so on. And that's all they're really focused on. They don't think that they're a target for security, and I think we've seen that shift. And being able to take something like a Nodeware and deliver it as an MSSP for a very affordable cost, I think it's going to be an easier shift today than what it was a couple years ago.
But even a large organization that doesn't have haven't quite developed their the cybersecurity maturity here, that's something we help with. We will talk about, well, what does your architecture look like? Where are your major concerns? If you have any, have you identified any weaknesses? And we can focus on what capability should we bring first to fit within whatever the budget available. So if it's a particular office with endpoints that are constantly being infected, then let's scan them. Let's look at the vulnerabilities that are exposing them. Let's do that first. Let's perhaps put an endpoint agent on there that gives us more visibility, instrumentation into the activity. So a few different approaches depending, but you don't need to do everything at once. You can start small, focus on the priorities, and then build on that.
So we got a question from somebody that said, we were supporting a law firm and we were providing them quarterly scans from a Nodeware competitor, and their clients have now demanded, if you're going to keep my critical data, you have to provide continuous monitoring and immediate updates, so we as a client know our data is not at risk. And they've now switched to, it says they've now switched to Nodeware. Are you seeing clients and supply chains starting to demand continuous monitoring in order to make sure their data is safe and secure when it's at somebody else's facility, if you will?
I'd just say that most organizations may not be aware that vulnerability scanning is possible, continuously. So that's the first piece. But for the monitoring of their systems, absolutely. For those that haven't got continuous 24/7 monitoring, yeah, we are hearing that either for a compliance mandate, some internal mandate, perhaps from investors or other stakeholders, or from their customers. Yeah, they want to make sure that that their systems their data is being monitored.
The other thing I would add to that, we have a number of MSPs that are supporting the auto dealerships, and the auto dealerships now have to meet the new FTC requirement, the safeguard requirement. And they just announced yesterday that they were not holding everybody accountable to the 12/9 deadline for the safeguard. But one of the things they were still asking was that you have continuous monitoring in place and you have continuous scanning in place, because if you don't have those things in place by 12/9, you will be fined by the FTC. So for any MSPs or any resellers that are on today's call, if you have those in your network, if you have dealerships, marine dealerships, RV dealerships, this is the perfect opportunity to go out to all of them and say, are you ready to meet the FTC safeguard requirement? And if not, here's how we can help you. And in most cases, the MSPs and the resellers can provide a lot of the IT solutions, but we are partnering with compliance organizations that have auto expertise that can provide the auto side of what's required for the FTC compliance. So for any resellers or MSPs, this is a great opportunity for the next month, and then probably, quite frankly, for the next few years, that you ought to be looking at prospects that are dealers, marine dealers, RV dealers, used car dealerships. They're all going to have to meet this safeguard. And this is a golden opportunity for you to go out to those organizations with Nodeware to check some of the boxes around continuous monitoring and continuous scanning. So we got another question about QRadar. This is somebody who might not have been listening at the beginning, but they said, is QRadar appropriate for small to mid-sized businesses? I only have a few employees. Mark or David?
Yeah, absolutely. I use this example all the time because we get the question often, but our smallest organization is an 18 user private wealth organization. It's 18 laptops, a printer, a small Meraki, and everything else is in the cloud. So absolutely, we can scale all the way down to that size, help you meet your compliance and make it affordable. So yeah, that's been our goal since the beginning of CarbonHelix, is to take something like a QRadar and scale it all the way down so it could be something usable by an organization your size.
Any, for the people, is it something you're making available to people nationwide, or do you prefer to do things regionally with clients? Just if you could give us a little bit of, how big your coverage model is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mostly North America, but all over the US. We have some multinational organizations that have data centers all over the world as well, and a few outside the US. But our coverage, since all of our hosting and all of our infrastructure is within IBM Cloud, we can scale very easily, bring up a data center in Germany, which is something we just did recently as well. So yeah, anywhere in the US is very simple for us.
Terrific. Mark Klein, we got a question about Red Hat and Debian and Ubuntu from a server sensor standpoint. Can you elaborate on kind of where we are on supporting the Red Hat, Debian, Ubuntu servers and systems? And then you might want to touch on Mac while you're there, since you talked about Windows.
Sure. So we currently have a Debian-based sensor. It's not in the it's in beta right now. It's available upon request. It will be in the dashboard. I would probably say we've shaken it down pretty good. So I would say by early Q1 next year, that will be available. We are actually actively building a Red Hat CentOS sensor and agent for that environment. As well, we also have agents for Macs as well currently. Those are already published.
Thank you. It should be noted, by the way, that Nodeware comes with an unlimited number of free agents, so you can install an agent on every single device that you have. Nodeware, is sold in blocks of 50, whether that's an annual subscription paid up front, or whether it's a monthly subscription. There's flexible terms as it relates to buying, but all of them come with an unlimited number of sensors and an unlimited number of agents for you to be able to deploy. So there's not any hidden charges or incremental expense that might go with that. The other thing that I would add is, with the remote workforce and the hybrid workforce, we have a lot of corporate devices that have, like myself, I have a laptop and I work from home a lot of the time, but there's a sensor on my device because I have access to a lot of critical data, and I want to make sure nobody's getting onto my home Wi-Fi in an urban environment, connecting in, who I might not know, might not be aware of. and then get through my device to the critical data back that's stored in the cloud under our organization. So just an example of how people are using agents on laptops and people are using sensors if they're worried about their home Wi-Fi's in an urban environment that potentially people are hacking into them. So just another example of kind of how you can use Nodeware without any hidden costs with an unlimited number of sensors or agents. So we've got about 5 minutes left. David and Mark, I'd like to turn it back over to you. Any closing comments, any thoughts, any any insights you have for people who either, are an MSP that needs SOC capabilities, or they're a small business that probably needs more than the IT support that they have today?
So I'll start from the MSSP or MSP perspective. If you're out there selling security products, whether it's an EDR or you have an organization that needs to have a SIM and they're looking for something cloud-based or on-premise and just want to make it affordable, that's something we can help with. Whether it's you reselling IBM security or you want to just bundle it into a SOC as a service, we take that, we integrate Nodeware, and we can bundle up an all-in-one SMB type solution. But as you know, we scale all the way up to the enterprise also. So if you have a resale opportunity there and you need some assistance with pre-sales, demos, POCs, that's what we support as well.
Mark?
Yeah, I'll just add from the enterprise and the MSP. Integration is important to us, so we look at not just how intuitive the portal is and how we can multi-tenancy this, all important factors for a company like ours, but also how can we get this data out? How can we talk to other tools? So things like XDR programs. We're working on an XDR beta with IBM, and our goal is how can we put Nodeware to use with that. And that's things like sharing asset information, publishing, that data, pulling vulnerability scores, using that in federated searches across all of your other security tools or across all of our customers, looking for the same types of issues and exploits and campaigns that are targeting organizations we support. So, on the other side of things as well, we're very familiar with integrating these tools. We can help you with that too, because we integrate these tools into our own processes.
Perfect. So you can see the contact information if you want to reach out to Nodeware, if you want to reach out to CarbonHelix. Here's some contact information for you for any follow-on questions that you would have. The other thing that since I've spent most of my career in sales and marketing before becoming a CEO, the thing that I like to tell people, especially the MSPs, if you have IT organizations that you're trying to figure out how to transition to cyber hygiene, you can ask them, do they get an immediate alert if somebody comes on their network that potentially could be vulnerable and could get access to their critical data? Or do they even know which devices they have that have vulnerability on them that could allow an opening for somebody to their critical data? Those two questions ought to be able to quickly determine a prospect, quickly determine whether somebody needs to upgrade from IT only to cyber hygiene or full vCISO capabilities. So I always like to tell people that I think Nodeware is not only the fastest time for a prospect to be qualified, but it also should be the lowest cost of sales, because with a couple of questions, you ought to be able to determine an opportunity, put a proposal on the table, and start providing them additional value-added services. So I always think that's something important to talk about, along with the deep scan capability and the ability to get started within, an hour, if you will, providing that executive summary to your clients and to your downstream executives. So with that, we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank Mark and David for joining us today. You know, we appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to continuing to work together. And if there's an end user out there that needs to get connected to an MSP, we're happy to connect you to David and Mark at CarbonHelix. And if you're an MSP looking for SOC capabilities, we're happy to introduce you to CarbonHelix as well, and help you be more effective and more efficient. So with that, we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to say goodbye for everybody on today's session. Thank you for your time, and everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and reach out to us if there's anything that you need. Otherwise, we'll see you on next month's session that we're going to have, as well as a session we're going to do with 7-figure MSP, and a session we're going to do with RAIN networks, if you're involved in either one of those networks and those membership organizations. So with that, thanks so much. Have a great day. Have a great weekend and a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks.